Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the glamorous, cutthroat, and endlessly chaotic world of Los Angeles fashion. Today is a truly explosive day to unpack one of the most shocking and violent confrontations we have ever witnessed on our screens. Grab your favorite beverage, settle into a comfortable seat, and let us meticulously dissect the monumental shift that has just shattered the foundations of Forrester Creations. The atmosphere inside the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations has been suffocatingly tense for weeks, resembling a powder keg just waiting for a single errant spark. The legacy of Eric Forrester, once built on innovation and familial unity, has slowly mutated into a battleground of egos and nepotism under the dictatorial reign of Steffy Forrester Finnegan. For months, the underlying current of resentment has been palpable among the staff. Hope Logan Spencer has watched her life's work be systematically marginalized. Zen Forrester Dominguez has seen his creative genius tossed aside, and a toxic culture of favoritism has firmly taken root. It was only a matter of time before this oppressive environment claimed its next victim, but no one could have predicted the sheer magnitude of the explosion that was about to occur. The catalyst for this unprecedented disaster traces back to the dimly lit corners of the Bikini Bar, where the simmering animosity between Will Spencer and R.J. Forrester finally boiled over into physical violence. Fueled by a toxic cocktail of jealousy, manipulation, and the lingering trauma of Ivy Forrester's deceitful machinations, Will had delivered a punishing blow to R.J.'s gut. It was a lapse in judgment, a moment of raw, unchecked emotion that left R.J. with bruised ribs and a deeply bruised ego. But instead of handling the altercation with the nuance it required, R.J. weaponized his injuries. He ran straight to the protective embrace of his sister, Steffy, and his father, Ridge Forrester, demanding Will's immediate termination. R.J. knew exactly how to play the game, utilizing his status as the golden boy of the Forrester dynasty to force his father's hand and eliminate his romantic rival. When Will Spencer was summoned to the main executive office, the air was thick with an impending sense of doom. He walked through the heavy double doors, his posture defensive but his spirit already weary from the relentless psychological warfare he had endured. Waiting for him was a tribunal that felt more like a firing squad. Ridge stood rigidly by the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette framed by the Los Angeles skyline, looking torn between his paternal instincts and his desperate desire to maintain corporate peace. Carter Walton stood nearby, his face a mask of professional dread, clutching a folder that undoubtedly contained the legal paperwork for Will's termination. And sitting behind the massive mahogany desk, radiating an impenetrable aura of absolute authority and sheer arrogance, was Steffy Forrester Finnegan. Steffy did not merely deliver a termination notice. She orchestrated a calculated humiliation. With her chin tilted upward and her eyes narrowed in a gaze of pure, unadulterated disdain, she systematically dismantled Will's professional standing. She weaponized R.J.'s bruised ribs, painting Will not just as an insubordinate employee, but as a violent, uncontrollable liability who had no place within the pristine walls of her family's empire. Her tone was dripping with condescension, a chilling reminder of the inherent bias she held against anyone bearing the Spencer or Logan name. Steffy made it abundantly clear that this firing was not just business. It was a deeply personal vindication, a swift and merciless punishment designed to remind Will exactly who held the power in this town. As Steffy's sharp, unforgiving words echoed off the walls of the CEO office, something deep within Will Spencer began to fracture. He stood there, absorbing the venomous insults, listening to the woman who had routinely enabled her own brother's toxic behavior while ruthlessly punishing anyone who dared to step out of line. The memories of Ivy's cruel manipulation, R.J.'s smug, triumphant face, and the constant, suffocating feeling of being an outsider in a rigged game all coalesced into a blinding, white-hot fury. The injustice of it all, the blatant nepotism, the hypocrisy, the sheer cruelty of Steffy's dictatorial leadership, rose from his chest to his throat, choking the rational thought right out of his mind. In a fraction of a second, the simmering tension snapped. The transition from stillness to violence was so sudden that it defied comprehension. Will lunged forward, closing the distance between himself and the mahogany desk in a single, fluid motion. Before Ridge could shout a warning, before Carter could step in to intervene, Will raised his hand and delivered a blistering, fiery slap directly to Steffy Forrester Finnegan's face. The sound of flesh striking flesh was a sharp, explosive crack that echoed through the cavernous office like a gunshot. The sheer force of the blow snapped Steffi's head to the side, her perfectly styled hair flying across her face as a stark, angry red handprint instantly bloomed across her cheek. The immediate aftermath was a tableau of absolute, paralyzed shock. For a terrifying moment, the entire world seemed to stop spinning. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of Will's heavy, ragged breathing. Ridge Forrester let out a guttural roar of paternal rage, lunging forward to physically place himself between his daughter and her attacker. Carter Walton dropped the termination papers, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and sheer legal terror, realizing instantly that the company had just crossed a catastrophic point of no return. Steffi slowly raised a trembling hand to her stinging cheek, her eyes wide with a shock that rapidly, dangerously morphed into pure, unadulterated hatred. But Will Spencer was not finished. The physical release of the slap had shattered the dam, holding back his long-suppressed rage, and a torrent of venomous truth came pouring out. Pointing a trembling, accusatory finger directly at the co-CEO, Will unleashed a verbal assault that cut deeper than any physical blow. He branded Steffi a dictator, a ruthless tyrant who used her family's legacy as a shield to mask her own deep-seated insecurities and petty prejudices. His voice boomed through the office, vibrating with a raw, emotional agony as he accused her of systematically destroying the futures of young, talented individuals simply because they did not fit into her narrow, biased view of the world. Will's tirade connected his own unfair dismissal to the broader systemic rot that had infected Forrester Creations under Steffi's rule. He screamed about Hope Logan being marginalized, about Zen's brilliant designs being left to gather dust while RJ was handed the keys to the couture kingdom without a shred of earned merit. He exposed the ugly truth that Steffi did not care about the art of fashion or the future of the company. She cared only about maintaining absolute, unwavering control and punishing anyone who threatened her fragile ego. Will's words were a brutal, unfiltered mirror held up to Steffi's face, reflecting the ugly reality of her leadership that everyone else had been too terrified to voice. As the ringing in her ears subsided and the sting on her cheek burned with an intense heat, Steffi's shock solidified into an icy, terrifying resolve. She did not yell. She did not cry. Instead, she fixed Will with a stare so venomous it could have frozen the Pacific Ocean. With a voice trembling with a dark, suppressed fury, Steffi vowed that this would not end with a simple termination. She promised Will, with absolute certainty, that she would see him behind bars. She declared that she would press criminal charges for assault, that she would utilize every single ounce of Forrester wealth, power, and influence to ensure that Will Spencer was locked in a prison cell, his future permanently destroyed by a felony conviction. The threat of incarceration hung in the air like a guillotine blade, but Will did not cower. Escorted out of the building by a frantic and deeply distressed Carter Walton, Will embarked on a walk of defiance. His career at Forrester Creations was undeniably in ashes, his reputation severely damaged, but his spirit remained unbroken. He had done what no one else had the courage to do. He had struck the dictator sitting on the throne. As soon as the heavy glass doors of the Forrester building closed behind him, Will pulled out his phone. He did not call Electra to seek comfort. He called the one man in Los Angeles who possessed the power, the ruthlessness, and the resources to wage war against the Forrester dynasty. He called his father. Across town, inside the sleek, modern fortress of Spencer Publications, the news hit Bill Spencer like a seismic shockwave. Sitting behind his desk, nursing a glass of expensive scotch, Bill listened to his son recount the humiliating firing, the slap, and Steffy's vow to put him in a prison cell. In that moment, the concerned father vanished, entirely replaced by the ruthless, predatory titan known as Dollar Bill. Bill did not reprimand his son for the loss of control. Instead, a dark, dangerous smile spread across his face. Steffi Forster had just made the most catastrophic miscalculation of her entire life. She had not just threatened a disgruntled employee, she had threatened the bloodline of the Spencer empire. Bill immediately sprang into action, mobilizing his vast, seemingly infinite resources. He slammed his glass down and began barking orders to his executive assistant, Allison Montgomery. Within minutes, Bill was on the phone with the most aggressive, high-powered criminal defense attorneys in the state of California. But Bill Spencer was not a man who merely played defense. He instructed his legal army to prepare a massive, multi-million-dollar countersuit against Forster Creations. He demanded they draft complaints for wrongful termination, the fostering of a hostile work environment, emotional distress, and gross corporate negligence. Bill was preparing to bury Steffi under a mountain of litigation so massive it would threaten to bankrupt her company. This explosive incident was the perfect, long-awaited catalyst for the ultimate corporate war. Bill Spencer had already been plotting the aggressive expansion of the Logan brand, attempting to poach Hope Logan and decimate Forster's market share. Now, this personal vendetta provided the ultimate ammunition. Bill planned to leak the details of Steffi's dictatorial behavior to the global fashion press, painting her not as a visionary leader, but as an unstable, biased tyrant who drove her employees to the brink of madness. He would use Will's narrative to expose the rampant nepotism and toxic culture at Forrester, leveraging the ensuing public relations nightmare to elevate the Logan brand to unprecedented heights of global dominance. Back at Forster Creations, the grim reality of the situation was settling over the executive suite. Carter Walton stood in the center of the room, rubbing his temples as a massive migraine set in. His prophetic warnings to Ridge and Steffi about the devastating consequences of their recent decisions had just materialized in the most violent, legally disastrous way imaginable. Ridge was left paralyzed, caught in the unbearable crossfire between his fierce desire to protect his assaulted daughter and the terrifying realization that he had just inadvertently sparked a war with a billionaire who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The personal scuffle at the bikini bar had officially mutated into a clash of titans. The slap heard around the fashion world has permanently altered the landscape of Los Angeles. There is no going back from this moment of visceral violence and broken boundaries. Will Spencer's impulsive act of rage has drawn a definitive line in the sand, forcing every single character to choose a side in the impending carnage. Steffi Forrester Finnegan is out for blood, determined to see her attacker locked in a cage, while Bill Spencer is unleashing the full, terrifying might of his empire to protect his son and destroy his enemies. The battle lines are drawn, the legal armies are marching, and the war between the Spencer and Forrester dynasties is destined to leave a trail of absolute devastation in its wake.